Are you ready to go behind the scenes and learn what it really takes to create consistent sales each and every month with your handmade small business? Join me, Monica Little, self-taught multiple six-figure small business owner and your product business coach, as I give you the insight and inspiration on how to better run your business and increase your sales in ways that you may not have even been aware of, so that your business can truly become what you knew it could be back when you first started. Learn how to let go of perfection, overcome the fear of failure that is holding you back, and finally start taking action so that you walk away feeling like you've cracked the code on how to run a successful small business. You're listening to the Product Biz Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Product Biz Podcast. My name is Monica Little and I'm so excited that you are here with me today for episode 23, where we will be talking about the importance of branding with Kaila from Dox Design. So before we dive in, I want to just lay the foundation for this episode and ask you, what's the one thing, if you could say one thing that separates your business in a saturated market, allows you to be a hell yes for your customers to easily get the sale, allows you to build a community of loyal repeat customers and excited fans, and allows you to actually charge more for your products? Most people, when we talk about branding, think of logo and colors and fonts that relate to your business. But branding is so much more. Branding is what connects you with your specific customers to build a relationship that opens doors for loyal fans, for repeat customers, and for more sales. Today, you will hear from branding expert Kaila, who is the owner of the branding and packaging studio called Dox Design. She leads her fearless team on a mission to create strong, compelling brands that flaunt their clients' standout qualities in fun and daring ways. Together, they create drill-worthy brands and designs for people like you, the doers, the dreamers, and if you're dog obsessed, then she is all about that too. I'm so excited to talk all about branding with Kaila today. You're going to learn so much awesome insight to why branding is important, how to start implementing branding into your business, why it matters, and it's going to be such a great episode. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Well, I am so excited to introduce to you all Kaila from Dox Design. Kaila, thank you so much. You are my first guest on the Product Biz Podcast. So I'm super excited to have you here. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk all about branding with us today.
Yes, I'm so excited to chat. I'm so honored that I'm your first guest. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I was like, okay, who do I want as my first guest? And I'm like, Kaila. Instantly, I'm like, this is going to be such a good conversation. I know you've came in to Product Biz Academy and talked to a lot of my members, and you have so much awesome knowledge about branding. So I'm like, this is just going to be a really good convo for everyone on the podcast to hear too. So I know that you are the amazing creative genius behind Dox Design, the branding and packaging studio. And we're going to be talking all about branding. What is branding? Why it's important, packaging design, branding tips, all of that today. But before we really dive in, I would love for you to just introduce yourself a little bit more to everyone who's listening. How was Dox Design really born? What's your passion for design? Like, where did that come from? And just bring us up to speed on how your packaging and branding studio really came about.
Yes. So like most small business owners and entrepreneurs, it kind of was a happy accident. I never thought I would own my own business. I've always been like a super creative person. You know, I was more of like the art and drama kid, not the sports kid in school. So I took all the arts classes and I was actually in the school newspaper and yearbook. And my professor was like, you kind of have a knack for this. You know, have you ever thought of graphic design as a career? And I didn't even really know that was an option. So I actually went to college and I went and got my degree in art school for graphic design. I thought I was going to move to a city, work at a big agency. Like that was the path I really had laid out for myself. So I graduated, got a job at one of the top agencies in the Midwest. I was working for brands like Target, Herman Miller, like these big brands. And I absolutely hated it. Like I hated going into the office every single day. At the time I had two small dachshunds, which is where the name Dox Design came from. And I hated leaving them every day. I felt super uninspired. I just was not dig in the corporate agency life. And I was like, wow, I just went to school to do this. And what now? So really as a necessity for me as like a creative person, I started freelancing on the side with clients that I felt passionate about, which at the time, like I said, I had my 2 dogs. So I kind of started out working with a lot of pet businesses, my dog groomer, the pet store I started working at. And from there, they started referring me to their vendors and businesses that they know. And before I knew it, I was like getting so much freelance work that I was able to quit my agency job and actually file for an LLC. And the name Dox Design was born since my dogs, my dachshunds, inspired me. So I was able, it was funny. I actually bought my first house, got married, and launched my business all within the same 2 weeks. So like most small business owners, we like love to take a lot on and like do everything at once. So me and my husband have been married as long as my business has been around. We're going on our 6th year this year. We've since expanded beyond pet businesses. You know, we work with a ton of product companies, which I know we're going to talk about today. And I now have a team of 4 designers, and I'm the creative director, kind of helping all of our designers bring these brands to life with what we like to call drool-worthy design.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I love like the type of design work that you do because it's so unique and it's so different. Like there's a lot of branding agencies and companies and small businesses out there that have a very similar like look and feel to them. But I love how the branding that you do is like super bold and super unique. And it's not going to be like this cookie cutter branding that, you know, someone looks like they potentially made on like Canva. It's like so detailed, so unique. So I remember when we first connected, that's what really drew me to you. It's just like the uniqueness. So where does that come from? Is that just how you said you really fell in love with creative design? Is that just your own, you know, creative genius for how you
I don't know if I'd give myself that much credit. I also have an amazing team that works with me. But I think one thing that's really important with Dox Design, and one thing I really pride myself on, is we don't ever try to push trends. We don't ever try to push our style. Like what you're saying, I think a lot of these design agencies, they have like a very specific look and people come to them for that look. And a lot of time those brands, they go out of style very quickly. They end up looking like all of their competitors. It was really important for me in our design process. The first step is what we call the discovery process, is to really do a deep dive into people's why they're starting their business, who their business is for. A lot of people like me have a story of why they started the business, and they might not even realize that there's like a special, unique point of view there. And then where our team comes to the table and our really zone of genius is bringing that story to life in a visual way. So, you know, we like to say we bring life into a brand's vision and mission through the power of visual storytelling. And that's really important, that we are telling our client's story and we're not trying to push a story that doesn't resonate with them or doesn't feel right with them. So I think just being able to listen to our clients and us having the creative brain and like coming from it in a visual way, a lot of times brings a lot of that to the surface that they didn't even know in the first place was there.
Yeah. And I think the key word that you said is visual storytelling. Like that is such a good way. And I think that's a perfect segue for us to maybe talk a little bit more about what is branding, because I think this visual storytelling point of view of branding is super unique. So talk me through, if someone were to ask you, what is branding? Why is branding important? What's the feel? How would you answer that?
Yeah. So usually when people come to me, the first thing they ask for is a logo, because that's all they know to ask for. And so a lot of people, when they think of branding, they're like, I got my logo, I'm good, that's my brand. But your branding's a lot more than that. It's, you know, the feeling of your customers when they interact with your brand, when they interact with your product. It's the visual tools you're using to communicate that. So colors, fonts, illustrations, patterns. It's the copywriting you're doing. It's your brand ethos. It's all of that wrapped into one. Now, where we come from it is the visual side of things, obviously. So we're building on top of all of that. You know, we really, like I said, get down to the why with our clients, and then we give them the visual tools they need to communicate that to someone. So, you know, your brand is really the communication piece that you are using for your customers to tell that story so that they become connected to it. Because especially I think in the product world, it's like, okay, you could sell a pencil, but like if you have a brand behind that pencil and you have this this story and this mission. It's like for each pencil, we also give one back to like schools that are in need. And like that's communicated through your brand and through your packaging. People are not only going to connect with your brand a little bit more, a lot of times they're willing to pay a little bit more for it because of the brand. So all those things really do come into play. And I'm sure a lot of people when they're first starting out, they're like, oh, how did this brand, get there? How do they have such a big following? It's because they really do start out with a foundation of what their brand is, instead of just like being like, oh, here's my logo I made on Canva and I'm going to run with it sort of thing.
I think that's a huge distinction, right? It's not just the logo. And I love how you said the feeling of like, what feeling are you giving to your customers when they see your products, your colors, your fonts, the copywriting that you use? I know you mentioned the word ethos. So talk me through that a little bit. What do you mean by that and how that relates to branding?
Yeah, I think like your brand, why, your brand mission, your brand vision. So a lot of times when we first do this discovery phase with our clients, they'll be like, oh, well, I'm just trying to target moms because I'm a mom. And I'm like, okay, well, let's like dig a little deeper. Like, why did you start your business? Oh, well, my kid, she got really sick. So I went to the hospital. And and they have the thing. And I'm like, okay, so you started it because you were trying to have a more healthier lifestyle for you and your kid. Like, let's dive into that a little bit more. So you're trying to, target moms who have like more of this healthy lifestyle. Like the more you dig deeper into like your why, that's what people are going to connect with. Like if you see a brand and you're like, wow, like this was written for me, like this is speaking to me, like that was done intentionally. And a lot of time the visual tools are the very first thing people are seeing before they're even reading the copy on your website, which people spend so much time on, is an important thing. But like if the visuals aren't even there, like if you're not catching someone's eye or keeping them on your website, like it's wasted. So the visuals a lot of time are the very first thing that communicate those ethos, that communicate the vision and the mission. So you want to make sure they're communicating the right thing.
Yeah, I was just on a call with my Product Biz Academy members yesterday, and we were talking about like the importance of your photos. Like people buy through photos, like you said, visual storytelling, and really connecting with customers through the visuals, because that's entirely how people buy nowadays. When we think about Instagram, like it's images, it's videos. When we think about TikTok, it's videos. That's what people use to make their purchasing decision. And like you said, like the words and the copy, that's supplemental, but how are you really capturing their attention right from the start with your branding and with your photography and how that all really comes together?
Yeah. And I think sorry, not to interrupt, but I think a lot of time, like if people just have that logo too, like they really struggle to come up with that content, to come up with those assets. They're like, okay, I have my logo. Now what do I do with my photos? Where it's like, if you actually put in the work for your brand and you know who you are, you're like, oh, I'm a natural and organic brand. So I'm going to show like the ingredients, and my photography is going to be outside and be very natural lighting. Where if you're like, oh, like I'm going for like this super fun and whimsical look, I'm going to use like bold, colorful backgrounds. Like it helps you even with things like that to be able to understand who you are as a brand, not just like the one piece of the visual asset.
Yeah. And then you can tell the story and you can tell it easier and you can connect with your people even more. One thing that I love that you said in one of our previous chats, and talk me through this a little bit, because when you focus on branding and being super particular in the colors, fonts, like the graphics that you use, every single part of what your brand stands for, I know that you talk a lot about how there's riches and niches and like being for a specific customer base. And I know you already talked about this a little bit when you were mentioning like who is your company for and what's the story behind it. But talk us through how important it is to be like super specific, to know who your target audience is and how the branding can relate to them.
Yeah, that is like one of the most important things, I think, to help understand who you are as a brand. I mean, I use the mom example, like I said, we work with a lot of pet companies. So people will say dog moms, and it's like, there's a million different type of moms in the world. Okay. There's like the super like urban city mom who like has the latest and greatest trends. There's like the more country suburban mom that maybe likes things a little bit more natural. Those are two very different people that you're communicating to. They shop at different places. They listen to different music, different packaging design will draw them in. Maybe the more natural mom is more drawn to the more minimalistic packaging that they want to display in their kitchen, whereas the more urban trendy mom wants the more cool, bright packaging design. Even thinking about it in terms of that helps you start to pick the visual tools that will then communicate to those people. So for example, I'm a super colorful, bold person. That's just who I am. I tend to gravitate towards those brands. When I see a graphic like that on social media, when I see packaging design like that or a display like that in a store, I naturally gravitate towards it because those brands were targeted for people like me. Whereas maybe the more minimal look, I tend to kind of look over where that might attract someone else. So there really is riches and niches, because the more that you can niche down and really, really kind of come up with who that person is, not be so general where it's like, I'm trying to target moms. That is where you can really start to get your customer that loves your brand. They're the type of customer who's going to love your brand. They're going to post about it on social media. They're going to share with all their other friends about it. Where if it's more general, I don't know, think about the toothpaste you use. I'm not ranting and raving about Crest toothpaste, but when I saw Burst toothbrush, I was like, oh my God, this packaging and this brand is so fun. I love the unboxing experience, and I'm going to take a picture of it and tag them on social media. That's where the riches and niches come in, because then your customers are your loyal fans and they're selling your product for you.
Yeah, I love how you said loyal fans. Basically, when you really focus in on your branding, you become a hell yes to the right customers. And it's a no-brainer. And one thing I always say too is you can be a mediocre yes to some people and be very vanilla and be very just basic, or you can be a hell yes for your people who relate to you. And like you said, then they want to share about you, and then they're coming back and buying from you over and over and over. So I know a lot of people really hesitate to be super specific in their branding, and they take a more general approach because they want to be for everyone. But it's if you want to be for everyone, you're actually missing out because you're really for no one, right? If you're so general.
Yeah. I think I find that a lot too. Even when I started my business, when I first was I'm going to focus on pet people because that's who I am. My husband was like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? That's never going to work. And it's it takes a little bit of time, but once you find those people know other people, that are like that. And it just becomes this huge community, and it becomes not just someone who's going to one-off buy your thing, but they're invested in you and your company. They're following you. They want to know your story. If you were to launch something new, they're going to be on a waiting list waiting for it. You really do want to create those, like you said, hell yes fans, and your brand is one of the first things they're going to see and one of the first things they're going to connect with to be able to do that.
Yeah. And there's a really good example. I was just talking to someone about this. I know that there's so many people, small business owners, that make and sell candles. And when you think about hundreds and thousands of small businesses, just from the people that I know in Chicago that make and sell candles, and the number one way to separate yourself is through your branding, right? That's going to be it, because everyone is essentially using a similar type of wax. There's some variations, similar type of fragrances. Obviously, you're combining them and making yours unique, but it's your branding and how your label looks and how it all comes together, which separates you. So when people say, I feel like I'm in a really saturated market, then the answer is, how is your branding? Yeah. How is it separating? Right?
Yeah, I think that's such a good example. That actually brings to mind a brand that I love, Burlap Bag. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. I think they're a fantastic example of being really unique in the candle. All of their scents are super punny, sassy, and their labels they're just really cool looking. And they've blown up with wholesalers, and just people connect and post pictures because the labels are funny. And it's the candle scents are not that inventive. There's 1,000 other candles like that, but they invested in their brand and their packaging, and they connected with people. It was funny. They leaned into that, and that was kind of their thing, and they really blew up because of it.
Yeah. And that's a super good point, because when people say how do I get more sales on wholesale with wholesale accounts, on Faire, on Etsy? Well, you have to stand out on Etsy. If you think about someone searching for candles, why are they going to be drawn to yours? What's making yours pop? What is really drawing them into your listing? And I know there's some candle companies where they just use an Arial font, and it's black and white, and it's on a label, and that's it. And that's not really sharing their story, sharing sharing their why, sharing who like they're speaking to. And you're honestly like leaving so much money on the table if that's what's happening, right?
And I can't even tell you how many times, because the other kind of half of our client base is retailers. And retailers know their brand. They know what they want their store to feel like. They know the type of products that they want to carry in their store. I can't tell you how many times clients have come back to me and told me after they've invested in their branding and packaging, their wholesale accounts specifically seek them out because of the vibe that we created for them. We have this one stationery company called Hattie Darling. She's like one of my favorite examples to use. We really leaned into like her country club aesthetic. That was like very much her thing. She's like kind of from like the Southern like tennis club coast. And when we leaned into that and gave her the packaging design for that, like the amount of like Southern like paper shops that picked up her stationery was insane because the packaging really like fit that vibe and it fit who she was trying to communicate to. Whereas before she just had kind of like a general script with like gold foil. It could have been in any store, you know, and like the displays that these wholesalers come up with for her brand without even actually really knowing her brand. It's so funny because it like fits her brand so well because it's like that well communicated through her packaging, her colors, her fonts, and all of that.
And it's interesting how you said you have both sides of it, right? Like you work with small businesses, but you also work with retailers, and how you said like these retailers know their style and know the exact type of products that will do good for their customer base. So when they're looking on Faire or other websites for products for their stores, they're not going with the generic ones. They're going with the ones that they know fit their own vibe. So that's super interesting to have like that retailer store owner point of view of them wanting something that's not generic. Like they want something to stand out. They want their business to do good. So it's not going to be the Post-it note that you can find at, you know, Office Max. It's going to be the super unique stuff. Like you mentioned, the super specific, like Southern style for that particular brand. That's so awesome. I know you mentioned one of the main benefits of branding, and I just want to dive into this a little bit more, is connecting more with your customers. And then usually they will pay more too. So talk to me a little bit more about that, because I love that. It's so true. But why do you think branding leads to customers paying a higher price? What goes on there?
I mean, think about it. I always use the example of like, okay, there's convenience. So you go to the coffee because you need it. You're falling asleep at the wheel. So at the gas station, you pay $1 for it. But then you go to Starbucks and you're paying for that green logo on that coffee cup, and you're paying up to $4 to $5. And you're going there because you like the atmosphere they created. They're what they stand for as a brand. Like, you know, you're a Starbucks type of gal. People pay more for the brand. I mean, if you think about even like luxury brands, I think I saw, I don't remember which fashion brand it is right now, but just to make a point, they took like a Lay's chip bag and they put I think it was Balenciaga. They put their logo on the Lay's chip bag and they're selling it for like $3,000, and people are buying it as like this like accessory to like hold around like a Lay's chip bag, but it's got their like logo on it because they've like built up this like brand of being like this luxury powerhouse sort of thing. So people will pay that premium price if they love your brand. I think beauty brands are another good example. Like you're going to pay a little bit more for like a Glossier than maybe paying for like e.l.f. cosmetics. And again, it's because Glossier is really like built up that branding portion. Like you love getting their packaging. They are like no waste. They're really fun with their unboxing. Their like products are really innovative. Yes. But like they've built like this kind of like millennial Gen X, like Gen Z, whatever brand around it. And people are willing to pay maybe $4 or $5 a little bit more for eyeshadow than they would somewhere else. So, I mean, I can examples for days, but it's all around us. Like when you're able to build that brand, build that trust, build that loyalty with your customers, but also build that story with them where they're like, oh, I'm just going to support this brand no matter what. A lot of times they won't even blink an eye to pay like an extra couple dollars for it. And I love using that Starbucks example because I think that's a great one.
Yeah. And it's really tying into more of people's emotions instead of them like thinking in their logical brain. So when your brand really connects with someone and they are that hell yes customer, that loyal customer, they just relate to your mission, they relate to your style, they relate to your packaging, everything that you've been saying, it's like that connection where people are buying from an emotion instead of thinking logically, like, do I need this? Do I not need this? Instead, they're like, wow, like I love what this brand stands for. And this is like so me. And this is what I stand for too. And it's just an easy win. And I think a lot of people don't realize the importance of branding. I think nowadays it's coming up more. Are you seeing like a shift that people are realizing like, wow, like this is how I set myself apart?
Yeah, I actually been surprised. Our last couple of inquiries, like I said, we work with a lot of product companies, and I think because packaging design is so important for a product company to stand out, I've been surprised. A lot of people are coming to us at the starting point of their product companies, which is smart because they're not having to like rebrand down the road, and they're wanting to start on the right foot. One of our companies, Yum Pup, they are a dog food subscription company. They came to us. We helped them with the name, the brand, the packaging, the website. They're like blowing up like crazy. It's insane. And it's because, you know, they got farther a little faster because they invested in that brand to start with. They understood that it is a kind of a saturated market. There is kind of a lot of dog food subscriptions out there, and they wanted to have this different point of view with it. And they wanted their packaging to look a certain way. And because of that, people were attracted to them and started, you know, supporting their brand. So yeah, I do think people think it's important. And I have been seeing a shift of people actually kind of onboarding with the brand earlier than they usually have been. I would say most people come to us at like the 2-year point, but yeah, the last couple of people have been like fresh starting. Like we've been helping them with the brand, like name, like from the get-go, like helping them launch it.
I think that's such a beautiful story though, because there's 2 ways you can do it. You can really do it on your own and try to figure it out. And this is me talking from my own experience, and change your branding so many times because it never feels right. You're always like working and iterating on it when you're doing it on your own. Or if you get it done right, like right away, and you're pulling in those sales sooner because you know exactly who you're talking to and how to talk to them. And I love that distinction. And that's something that I really work with a lot of people in Product Biz Academy, which I know have also worked with you. A lot of our clients have worked with you for specifically branding, but it's like there's 2 ways to do it, right? You could either do your branding yourself and have maybe lower sales because you're just not speaking to the right people in the right way. You're trying to figure it out. Or it's like rip the Band-Aid off, do it right away, and you're going to get so much of those sales earlier on, exactly like the subscription box dog food company that you're talking about. So it goes back to like, yeah, people will pay more for branding, which I think is like the main benefit that we see from.
Yeah. And also, I think starting earlier, like the one kind of like symptom of our signature branding program I didn't quite realize that I hear now all the time from clients is the amount of time it saves them. They're like, oh my God, you have no idea how many hours I was spending in Canva trying to get one social media post out. I couldn't hire someone because I didn't have a brand guideline to send them. Like I didn't even know, like I hired this VA to do my social post. And we didn't even really know where to start. Or like I hired a developer to do my website and we like used a Shopify theme, but I wasn't even sure like which colors and fonts to use. It's like having all of that and having a really strong foundation to start with saves you time because it's like you all have a common goal and vision in mind that you're working towards, and it's not scattered all over the place. I think a lot of times I see that people maybe when they start out on their own, which I get it, you know, we all got to do what makes sense for us, but down the road, it's like even more expensive to have to like scrap and redo everything because everything's kind of been Mod Podge together. And like you said, it is really hard. I mean, I even have this problem with my own brand. Like you kind of can't get out of your own way sometimes with your own brand, and you like overthink like a color that you probably shouldn't be overthinking. So sometimes it's nice to get like that professional set of eyes on it, just to like not only like give you the permission to be like, yes, this is who you should be, but to also like help you not overthink those things and just give you the tools to like get over that hump and just get the stuff done.
Yeah, work with the experts and then progress from that point on. So you mentioned packaging design. So talk me through a little bit, like what is packaging design? What's the importance of packaging design? All that fun stuff.
Yeah. So the 2 main things we do, I would say are for e-commerce business. So the shipping and unboxing experience. So if you're primarily selling e-commerce and you're maybe not doing fairs or selling in stores. So you don't need like a retail or a PDP display, what that unboxing experience is. So we do a lot of like subscription boxes, mailer boxes, that sort of thing. And why that's so important is because a lot of times that's the only touch point that your customers have with your brand. So making sure that it's elevated, that it's memorable, that it's on brand is what gets your customers excited about it, gets them posting about it on social media, makes them remember you as a brand. If it just comes in like a brown box, people are like, hey man, whatever. Like, having some sort of creative way to really connect with your customers. And again, a lot of times people are like, well, I don't know what to do. And it's like, well, because you haven't really thought about the brand. Like, how can we work that in? So that's one thing that I've seen that's so important. I always use our one client example. They were like my very first client ever 5 years ago, Dogs of Charm City. They are a dog mom apparel company. We did a shipping box for them. It was like pink, super bubbly. It was like really targeted towards like millennial dog moms. And her online sales grew by 297%. And she literally has like a folder of screenshots from people that tell them all the time, I found you because my friend posted that box, or like, I saw that box at my friend's door. And I was like, what is this? I want it. And like, because of that, like it like spiraled out of control. And like all these like dog moms from like outside of her area were even finding her through social media because she was an e-commerce brand. So there really is power there in packaging design. Then of course, if you are a product that is doing wholesale accounts, packaging design is just as important, not only to get those wholesale accounts, but to get your products bought by the customers. But we have had customers or clients of ours tell us like their wholesalers have been like, oh, I bought your product because the packaging design was so well thought out and I could easily display it and it fit with my store, so even the kind of on the flip side of it, if you are a product that's like primarily wholesale or doing fairs and things like that, having packaging design that catches people's eyes off the shelf when they're next to all these other sort of brands is really important.
I love it. So you mentioned two components, right? Like the shipping box experience, like that, and then also how your product just looks. You mean in terms of like the label and how if it's in like a smaller box, not necessarily a shipping box, but how that is.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important because what you're really touching on is like the experience of the customer. And if they have this awesome experience and it's like elevated and it's so unique, that leads them to like want to share about it on social media. And then you get those other people who randomly see it and are like, ooh, what's that?
Yeah.
So it's so interesting how this goes to kind of what we were saying earlier about the visual experience, but it's also like that just unique experience when you get a box that's branded and every single component of it is thought out, from like the branded logo tape to like the colors of the crinkle cut paper inside and how all of that like relates to that brand and comes in cohesively. So I love that you work with business owners on the packaging aspect too, because that's just like elevating it to the next level on top of that, which is awesome.
Oh yeah. Like a lot of clients, if they're not ready for the full signature branding program, because like I said, I understand it's an investment. You got to start somewhere. A lot of them will book our design days and we'll just kind of help them elevate their packaging design to like get them that bump in sales that they need to then invest in your brand. But that is like tip, if anyone like leaves here, is to like rethink like your shipping and your mailing experience. Like even if it's something as simple, like you said, is like branded tape or like the crinkle paper you're using being like your brand color, or maybe like some sort of insert that you put in there. I've even had clients who have bought like a colored box from Paper Mart and design like stickers and get them printed from Sticker Mule and put them on the box that way. Like there's a lot of like cost effective ways that you can do it, but even just like taking that extra step with that over just sending someone like a brown paper box, I think really connects with your customers and kind of is like, oh wow, like this is special, like I'm actually gonna like take my time opening this box and I'm excited to see what's inside.
Yeah, I think the word that you said is like special. Like when customers feel like they're receiving something that's made with love and has intention behind it, that's a totally different experience than getting like a blue and white Amazon poly mailer in the mail. And, we all get them, but it's not a fun experience. It's just like, yeah, I ordered this and I got it. But when you get something from a small business with like intention and all of this work behind it, that's really what just elevates it and helps so much. So for the people who are kind of starting off with their own branding, I know you just mentioned a couple quick tips with your packaging design, but do you have any quick branding tips or advice that you would give to small business owners who are starting off?
Yes. So first and foremost, we do have a free brand quiz that I love to put everyone through. So pretty much what we did is we took the 6 most common, what we called like vibes that people say they are. So for example, they'll come to us and be like, being like natural and organic is really important to me, or like, I'm a party brand and I really want to be bright and fun and like radiate that. So I think being able to understand kind of where you fit in like the vibe of your brand is first and foremost the foundation that you're going to pick everything off of. So if you don't know that already, if you're struggling with that, we do have a free brand quiz that you guys can take over, and I can give you the link for people to take that. And I think that's kind of a good starting place, because people will take that and they'll either be like, no, this doesn't sound like me. And then they'll read the other ones and connect with one, or they'll get the vibe and they're like, oh yeah, I didn't even think of that. And then once you kind of have those words, those vibes to use, that's what you base all of your visual decisions off of. So we kind of break everything down into a couple of categories: fonts, colors, brand elements. So fonts, everyone knows what fonts are. That is, going to communicate a certain sort of vibe for your customers. So you want to make sure that like everything you're picking is really communicating that vibe. That would be like my number one tip. So if you are going to be like a natural or organic brand, like don't pick like a super bold handwritten font. That probably doesn't make sense for you. Or like using bright neon colors isn't really going to communicate like that natural organic vibe. You want to make sure that the visual messaging is lining up with who you are as a brand and that there's not a disconnect there. And a lot of times I think that's the number one mistake that people will use. They'll be like, oh, I'm just going to use blue because it's my favorite color. When it's like, they haven't really thought about like, okay, like who are you as a brand? Like, what are you trying to communicate? And does that actually make sense for you?
I love it. So you mentioned the fonts, the colors, the brand elements. And I think one piece that you mentioned too, or that you were kind of alluding to, is using those same fonts and colors on literally like every single platform.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So we kind of say there's 2 parts and pieces to it. There's picking with purpose. So, figuring out your brand vibe and picking those parts, the fonts, the colors, the brand elements with purpose, making sure there's a purpose behind them. And a lot of times clients will hire us to do that part and we'll do it. And then the second part is using consistently. And then some of our clients won't do this part. And then I'm like, this is why you guys aren't growing, because you're not using your brand consistently. So, taking all the time and energy to actually have all those visual tools, but then actually using them. So making sure every social media graphic you put out, that your profile photo on your Instagram, that your brand fonts on your website, the colors on your website, to the fonts and colors and patterns on your packaging, that it all looks the same. So there's a consistent experience going on here. And so then when it comes to it, that your brand becomes a tool for you to sell. Like people want to see your brand. For example, I use this like cobalt blue color. Whenever people see it, they're always like sending me stuff like, oh, I thought of you. And it's like, I've used that color so consistently in my brand that now people think of me when they see it. So like you want to get to that point with your customers where it's like, maybe you're a pink girl and like you're using such a specific shade of pink that every single time someone sees something like that, they're thinking of you and they're thinking of your brand.
Yeah. And to the point too, that whenever someone's like on social media, just browsing Instagram stories, they don't even need to like read whose profile it is, because they know those colors and fonts are you. And it's just like building that in your customers and potential customers' brains that it's you, instead of like bouncing around from like colors and fonts. And then when people are browsing through their stories, in like the simplest example, they just have no idea who it is.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously the example of like, if you see a yellow M on a red backdrop, like, it's McDonald's, right? So how do we get our brands to be that similar and familiar and consistent and established with our potential customers, that they just like know it's us, right? And you're getting into like their subconscious brain that they just know it's you when they see those colors.
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess one tip would be for people, if they don't already, like if you have brand colors you're using, figure out what your hex code is. So it's like the pound symbol with like a string of letters or numbers. Like if you go on Canva and use the eyedropper, like it will give you the hex code. And like write that down, put it on a sticky note if you can. Like a lot of times I'll be like, oh, like, what's your brand color? And they'll be like, oh, lime green. And it's like, okay, your lime green is like in 5 different shades. Like even that isn't like consistent enough. So like top tip right there, like one thing you do today after you're done listening to this podcast, like write down your brand color hex codes and use those.
That's so funny because I worked with you and Dox Design for the Product Biz Academy branding. And it's so funny. Like now I know all my hex colors like by heart. It's like,
I was going to say,
you
do such a good job too. Like every time I see, like you just such a good example, whenever like I see a reel or a story, something of yours pop up, I don't even have to like look the profile. I know it's you because you're using those colors so consistently.
Yeah. To the point that you just memorize the hex codes. It's
yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to get a tattoo.
I love that.
They're like that much a part of me. But speaking of working with you, so I had the pleasure of working with you to do the rebranding for Product Biz Academy. I know some of the members in Product Biz Academy also worked with you, Allison from Rocco B, Dale from Mad Harriet, Teresa from Handy Girl Design. So our members love working with you in Dox Design. So talk me through a little bit of the services that you offer, how you work with small businesses, and what you provide.
Yeah. So the main way that we work with our clients is through a signature branding program. So that is essentially doing all the things I talked about today. We really start with the discovery phase, getting to know you and your business, your why, your mission, your vision. And then from there, we help you with all the visual tools to showcase that. So we design your full brand, which yes, is a logo, but the illustrations, the patterns, the colors, and really you leave with a fully done brand ready to use and to implement consistently. So that's our signature branding program. And then the second way a lot of people work with us is our design days. So like I mentioned, maybe if people aren't ready to invest in the full brand yet, and they wanted to like up their packaging design, or I'm happy you just mentioned Allison. We do design days with her. We just created a bunch of new fun graphics that she's going to be putting on her shirts, which I'm really excited for. So that is pretty much a VIP day with our team. You get 8 hours with our team and we work through a bigger project with you. So packaging design, landing pages, any sort of like supporting illustrations, that sort of thing. Really kind of try to be the one-stop shop here and help everyone with all things design and packaging.
I think that's such a good benefit of working with you, though. It's not just like, oh, here's your logo and we revamped it. Like you work with your clients to help them. And I know with Allison too, you guys helped with her website. And now you said like graphics for some of her tees and just the brand elements that you mentioned and like the icons. There's so much that goes into it that your team provides that it really helps to just have that confidence by having this like super elevated brand with all the elements that you need, the colors, the fonts, the logo, and so much of it comes together in this beautiful, cohesive way. That I think a lot of times what happens, it's like a huge confidence builder for businesses, right? They end up
for sure
walking away just like, I'm so proud to share this beautiful business that I'm creating with like this elevated branding that just makes them feel so much more confident about it.
Yeah. And so many times people come to us, I think the branding processes can be a little intimidating for people because they're like, I'm not creative, or like, I'm not an expert. And like, this is like, I've found that sometimes people are like intimidated to like come with us. And I think, like you said, a lot of times towards the end, there is this confidence, but also I think like this renewed sense of creativity and like excitement in their brand, where it's like, now they have the tools they need and they feel more confident to go in Canva and create a social media graphic really quick. And like, we always are hyping up our clients. We're always like, yes, love this, looks so good. And it's like they have the tools to now be able to do that. And they feel more confident to like be creative and try new things and know that it's still going to be on brand for them.
Yeah. Like a beautiful cake. And now you can put all the little toppings on it, whatever extra you want to do. But I think working with you is awesome. I know the members of Product Biz Academy that have worked with you just to say amazing things. And I would love for you just maybe to end with like, how can people get in contact with you? What's your Instagram? Where can people learn more about that?
So the best way to get in contact with us definitely is our Instagram. It's Dox, Dox.design, DESIGN, no S at the end of there. And conveniently, that is also our website URL. So Dox.design. On our website, you can kind of check out about our past brands we've worked on. All our services are listed on there. Also like our contact form to actually work with us. But Instagram is probably the best place if you want to kind of just check out what's going on behind the scenes. We do all our brand reveals on there. We post a lot of design freebies, more design tips. So definitely follow us on Instagram and then check out our website. And if you guys are interested in working with us, there's a big old button that says get started here. And you guys can fill out that form and get on a call with us and we can chat about how we can work with another.
Awesome. So before we end, is there any last minute tips or advice or main takeaways that you want to share?
I think not even just from like a branding perspective, but just like from like a small business owner's perspective, like that is why I started my business, is because like, you know, I own a small business too. And I love working with other small business owners because like, I get it. I understand like the blood, sweat, and tears that go into like owning a small business and how passionate they are about it. And I love that. And I think just one thing I wish that someone would have told me when I first started is just like, not stop, like, don't give up. Like there's so many times where I felt like, oh my God, is this going to be worth it? Like I should just go back to my 9 to 5. Like, what the hell am I doing? Like, what's taxes? I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like every small business owner, especially if you're just starting, like started where you're at, and don't compare your day 1 to someone's year 5. You know what I mean? Like I just said, I'm going on my 6 years of business. I get a lot of young designers reaching out to me who are just starting. They're like, how? And I'm like, it took me 6 years to get here. And it's because I wake up every single day and I don't give up. So I think just that's like my one like word of advice I like to give to every small business owner outside of like branding. Obviously I can give you branding tips all day, but just, I see you guys, I know what it's like keep going and you guys will get all your dreams and goals eventually.
Oh my gosh. I love it. That's so beautiful. Yeah. That's so true though. That's 100% true. Because a lot of times we just get stuck with where we are right now. And number one, we don't look to see how much we've actually accomplished, like taking inventory of, wow, look how much I've done and how far I've gone, but also knowing like, yeah, it takes time and it takes work. And you got to love what you do. But when you do love what you do, it makes it so worth it. And it's so easy to wake up every day and do what you love and
absolutely
serve other people. Well, Kaila, thank you so much. I had such a fun time talking with you all about branding, all about Dox Design. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. I appreciate it so much. And I will make sure to link your Instagram and website in the show notes so people can get in contact with you. But thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining in on this episode with Kaila from Dox Design. If you want to learn how you can get in contact with Kaila, how to follow her on social media, click the show notes and all of the links to keep in contact with her will be there. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week on the next episode of the Product Biz Podcast.